A lot of reaction to the latest rate rise, which did go against market expectations. The RBA saying, though, not necessarily is it finished yet on interest rates. They've gone from 0.1% to 4.1%. Joining me live is Liberal frontbencher David Coleman. Thanks very much for your time. What's your reaction? Does it feel like we're headed towards a recession now?
Well, Tom, what we know is that the government is putting constant upward pressure on interest rates. Spending in a way that is putting pressure on inflation. For every $1 of savings in the budget, there were $2 of spending, and that's just the wrong thing to do because people are really hurting. The average family on a mortgage now is seeing payments of $22,000 a year, more than they were a year ago. And, the government likes to blame other people, Tom. It's always look over here, look over there. But what the Prime Minister should be doing is having a good hard look at himself, because it's his policies and his spending which is contributing to this huge inflation problem that we have in the country.
The RBA Governor specifically said the budget just handed down is not inflationary. So when they're crunching their numbers, that's not a factor. That's from the RBA Governor. Are you concerned that the RBA is putting too much stock maybe in that monthly inflation data we just had, which it had a high headline figure, but the core inflation was going down? Are they too worried about sort of missing inflation again and as a result going to put the economy into recession?
Well, look, Tom, the RBA will make their own decisions, but they've got to take into account all factors, including the fact that the government is spending more than it is saving. That is a mathematical
But as I said, the RBA said
for $1
on their reckoning, it's not inflationary. Do you take them at face value on that when they're calculating what they do with interest rates?
Well, if you look at the analysis from Chris Richardson and other respected economists, Tom, you've seen very significant concern about the level of spending. And indeed, the market expectations of an interest rate rise actually rose after the budget was handed down. And I think it's very clear that the government is spending in a reckless fashion. It's bad for inflation. It puts upward pressure on interest rates. And, Anthony Albanese can't just point the finger at everyone else, because that's what he does, Tom, on this issue and so many other issues. He's been the Prime Minister for more than a year. He said he would get inflation down. He said he would make mortgages cheaper, but people are actually paying $22,000 more.
Now, we did get you on to talk about artificial intelligence. It's in the headlines a lot at the moment. Quite a few of them are, frankly, alarming ones. You're the Shadow Communications Minister. I'm sure you've thought a bit about this. What do you think about the technology generally? Do we have a fair bit to fear about this, or is that concern overblown?
Tom, look, I think this is a very big deal. We should not understate how big artificial intelligence is. It is the biggest technology development since the creation of the internet itself. And it's got lots of great opportunities in terms of improved productivity, in terms of medical research, a whole lot of areas. But, there are risks too, and it's appropriate to consider those risks. It's appropriate for government to be cognizant of those risks. That the government's been a little slow, to be frank, in taking on this challenge. But, we did welcome those discussion papers they put out last week. But it is a very significant issue, and it's one that will get only more significant over time.
I mean, it's been in the economy and in the world for quite a while. It's sort of getting more attention now. There are elements that we need to act more urgently in. Look at deep fakes, for example. Something like that could change an election result. You could fake the Prime Minister or the opposition leader saying something outrageously controversial, a day or two before the polls, and it might be hard to disprove it. Do we need to act on some things a bit more urgently?
Yeah, there are some things that do require action. Intellectual property is one, Tom. So at the moment, the AI models are effectively, almost certainly taking the intellectual property of media companies and many other companies and basically incorporating that into their models without compensation. And the government needs to address that, because basically the laws of Australia should continue to apply in an AI world. What we want to do is not step on the technology, not over-regulate, because that would be bad, but also ensure that, in a sense, the sovereignty of nations like Australia remains in place, and that we decide what the laws are, and that we apply existing laws like intellectual property laws.
Well, we had the coalition, of course, take action over the likes of Google and Facebook to make sure they paid media companies, including the owner of Sky News Corp, money when they were actually making the money on links and stuff. ChatGPT gets sort of complicated, doesn't it? Because it scans essentially the whole internet, comes up with something through using everyone else's work. Is that a bit trickier? I get what you're saying about IP, but how do you actually do that? Does every organisation get a fraction of a cent? How do you do that?
Well, firstly, you have to those models need to be transparent about where they're collecting data from, because it's not just they're taking snippets of data, they're actually turning that into, in a sense, a new product, which is ChatGPT or similar products. So those companies like OpenAI are getting value out of that intellectual property from media companies and lots of other companies as well. And so that does need to be addressed. We want artificial intelligence to have lots of positive impacts on the economy. It will have many positive impacts on the economy, but it also needs to play by the laws of democracies, including Australia. And one of the laws that democracies have is around intellectual property, and it needs to play by those rules.
So in your role getting across all of this, how does your head hit the pillow at night? Excited, or is this another way the whole civilization as we know it could end?
Look, I think this is huge, Tom, to be frank. This is a gargantuan issue. We're going to be talking about this for months and years and decades. It's a huge deal. And you've got obviously the generative AI, ChatGPT and so on, but also the broader issue of I guess what's called artificial general intelligence, which is as technology gets smarter and smarter and better at doing more and more tasks. And that can have some positive implications, but it can have some negative implications too. So I think we should be optimistic. I think we should be positive, but we should also have the intellectual honesty to recognise that there are some risks here. And we want a government that doesn't over-regulate, that doesn't step on the technology, but is also smart enough to be thinking about what's coming down the track and ensuring that Australia retains controls of its laws.
David Coleman, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.